Folks, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and it is the Battle of Yol. I know, when we leave Nemedicina, it can be a little bit scary, but it's okay. You're in for a good one today. We've got Colchis up against the Odryssian Kingdom. Colchis, not to be confused with cold cheese, which we all enjoy on a sandwich or in other similar applications. But they are kind of an Eastern faction that has a very bare roster. Many of you voted them to potentially be one of the worst factions. And if it's roster diversity, I would probably agree with you. They probably are amongst some of the worst factions, just in terms of availability to pick on the roster. However, in terms of performance, I don't think I would put them in the worst. They do have access to Cartly Axemen and Axemen, which can be useful in the right situation. They have Eastern Archers, which are pretty decent for the price. And they do have good heavy cavalry, and they even have Horse Archers at their availability. So, although their roster is limited, it is a roster that can be potentially deadly when wielded properly. There's some Eastern Spearmen here hanging out in their pajamas, as they have been since the days of Rome 1. We've got some Thracian cavalry coming up here to probe the Colchians and get a look at their army. This is a nice way to get some intel for the Odryssians, so they are moving up and kind of seeing what pops out here. The Eastern Archers might take some shots at them. Let's take a look at the cavalry here. We got Noble Blood Cav for the general and another 2 Noble Blood Cavalry supporting, and then the 2 Horse Archers, so 5 cavalry in total for Colchis. They have a huge line of axes. They have a back line of Cartly Axemen. I believe there's going to be 5 there, and I believe there's 5 up front. They're not all Cartly Axemen, though. I saw some standard Axemen, but it's mostly Cartly Axemen, I believe. Yeah. And the Cartly Axemen just come with a lot higher attack than you usually see on an axe unit. Decent charge, and the survivability is not bad in terms of armor and melee defense. Like, it's not outstanding, but it's not bad. So they'll be a solid infantry. Let's take a look over here for Odryssian Kingdom. There are some Thracian slingers coming into view. At this point, the Eastern Archers are going to have really good cover here. The slingers are not going to do well in this fight. They are coming forward and firing into the thicket. The archers are firing out of it. So they're going to be getting some nice cover, and I would assume the slingers here are not going to get the best of this engagement, especially not with the Noble Blood Cavalry coming out to give them an unwanted greeting. They're a little bit far ahead of some of their support, and Colchis might make them pay for it here. We're seeing a little bit of a retreat. We have some mercenary hoplites and veteran hoplites, so a different type of army coming forward for the Odryssian Kingdom. Not the Odryssian nobles we're used to seeing. Oh, yeah, those Noble Blood Cavalry do connect with 1 slinger unit, and they're going to get some nice damage done to it. The other one's pulled off their attack, which was probably smart with those hoplites rolling up behind him. A combination of hoplites and Falx warriors could be interesting. However, axe units should perform decently against hoplites because the hoplites are not particularly aggressive with their attack stats. Ooh, those archers are going to shred those Thracian warriors. So the Odryssians, their army is a little bit out of formation here. There are some Thracian nobles, looks like 2 ultimately. There's some Thracian warriors supporting the flank, but I do like the more heavily armored shielded contingent here to go up against potentially a lot of skirmish and cavalry, so it does make sense, I think, in some ways for the Odryssian Kingdom to have switched their build a little in this regard from a more standard build that was going to be a lot more Falx heavy. Now, they cannot see most of the Colchian army at this point, so I don't know what kind of intel that the Odryssians have, but they're going to come forward. I don't think this head-on engagement between the hoplites and the axemen is going to go particularly well for the hoplites. There's going to be a javelin volley coming from all the axemen. There's a second line of axemen behind them. So we'll see how this turns out. The mercenary veteran hoplites ought to be pretty tough. But even them, again, I just don't know how they're going to trade because axes do well against armor, and that's usually one of the saving graces of hoplites in a fight, is that their armor can keep them in longer than usual. And the axemen have a lot better charge than the hoplites as well. So we'll see how that goes. I like how the Falx are going to be used as shock infantry through their own troops. That could be a nice touch here to even those fights out, so I do like that. The slingers are still in position and working away at those Eastern Archers. Would be cool, too, to see them try and pick at that Noble Blood Cavalry. The Horse Archers here are kind of still just sitting back, as are the Eastern Spearmen, just trying to hold some attention over here. I think this is bait. more than anything. We do have one Thracian Royal Cavalry where the general's at. The Eastern Archers are focusing on the Thracian Nobles. It looks like there's going to be an overload here on this flank, and that's not a bad idea, honestly, by the Thracians here. The Slingers got a bit of a missed target there. We're now going to see Colchis bringing all their cavalry down here. This could get rough for the Thracians. They don't have the infantry to support to hold back 3 Noble Blood Cavalry. Their Slingers are going to need to get their attention turned. And we're going to need to see the Thracian warriors cycle charge here rather than just get bogged down in these engagements. But the Hoplites now providing a nice armored backbone for the Thracians to work from. Okay, nice intercept here by the Thracian warriors into the Noble Blood Cavalry. The Thracian Royal Cavalry going into the Noble Blood Cavalry. I think the Thracian Royal Cavalry's probably on par, pretty close. But there's 3 enemy cavalry there, and they easily chewed through that Thracian warrior. So the Odryssian Kingdom's got some trouble in their hands. They're kind of overcommitted to the infantry fight now, and they're going to have a difficult time protecting this flank. They did have those Thracian horsemen, but they are being chased off by a horse archer at the moment. Those Thracian horsemen could have been handy up here as well, and the Slingers needed to be picking at that Noble Blood Cavalry as hard and as fast as it can. We've got some Thracian warriors being pulled out of the melee to come out here and try and come after the cavalry. But I almost think the Hoplites might have been better to pull into that fight, potentially. The sheer number of axemen is becoming somewhat problematic for the Odryssians, and their Slingers are going to get caught by Eastern infantry. And it's just going to get all sandwiched in by the cavalry here. The Thracian Royal Cavalry General is now caught by a Noble Blood Cav, so the Thracians' general is in big trouble. There is a noble infantry pulling out of there to try and come help. They're pretty tired, but they could get in here and help start cutting into some of this Noble Blood Cavalry, but this one's chasing the wrong unit at the moment. So not a great situation here for the Thracians, and a nice use of this Noble Blood Cavalry here to get rid of the mercenary Hoplites. I'm impressed. The Hoplites did stay in the fight a pretty good long while, and they've allowed some of the Falx units to help even it out a little. But at this point, the number of axemen from Colchis and the number of cavalry is becoming an issue for the Odryssians. The Slingers got all wrapped up in this and couldn't get free. The Thracian nobles are trying to save their general here. And that's a good call. Looks like he's going to go after the Eastern Archers instead. Those Thracian nobles aren't going to like getting charged, but they will do a lot of damage to the Noble Blood Cavalry if they get wrapped up in melee for very long. They just have very high attack. Those Cartly Axemen are holding out very well here. Very well indeed. And it's made for a rather long melee slog up front, which the Odryssians just really couldn't afford. They had to commit a lot of their infantry against those Axemen, and then it left them vulnerable to that Noble Blood Cavalry working around their flank. So it looks like that the Colchians are going to wrap this one up rather convincingly here. I do like the idea here of just almost kind of burying the Odryssian in axes. That's not a bad call. And then the Noble Blood Cavalry seems like on paper that it was basically a match for the Royal Cavalry from the Odryssian Kingdom, which means that the Colchians actually kind of had an advantage here because the Noble Blood Cavalry, cost-wise, is better than the Thracian Royal Cavalry, so they can get them cheaper. And then the Axemen and the Cartly Axemen here, yeah, I mean, it looks like 7 Cartly Axemen, 3 standards. That is a lot. And like I said, I do kind of like the switch here for the Odryssians for a couple of reasons. One, the Colchians can fling a lot of missiles your way, and archers are quite good against Falx units because they just don't have the shield and they cause a lot of damage. So the hoplite line here, I don't think is a horrible idea. It's just that they don't end up trading well into the axes. So it's kind of an interesting one here where it might almost have been neat to kind of seen... I almost wonder if the Thracian nobles didn't become overkill for this, and you just need more standard units. But then again, you got to spend your money here somewhere. Yeah, maybe not get the Thracian nobles, and you had the extra Thracian Royal Cavalry. And then this would have been a lot tougher for Colchis, because then they wouldn't have been able to operate with impunity at the Noble Blood Cav. That would have left your Slingers free to continue attacking other things. So I do think here that the Odryssians were probably pretty close. I think trade those 2 Thracian nobles for a couple more Thracian royal cavalry, and then you probably get a pretty close fight here, depending on how a few different things work out. But again, not a bad performance at all out of the Kartli Axemen. I figured they might do well against hoplites, and they did, I think, for the most part. But the hoplites didn't go without kills either. So you can see that they were getting some work done in there. But of course, these are mercenaries as well, and I don't know how that works out from a cost standpoint. That also may have added significant cost. But thank you to Hotel Soap and Doctor here for the game. Definitely enjoyed watching this one. Hope you all did too, and I'll be back with more action in Total War Rome 2 soon.